Somewhere along the way, leadership culture sold us a lie. If you adapt how you speak, you're fake. If you bring energy to different rooms, you're performing. If you sound the same everywhere, you're inauthentic, and that lie is expensive. It makes smart people freeze. It turns promotions into identity crises and convinces leaders that the only way to grow is to become someone they don't even like. Today, we're taking the authenticity myth out back lovingly and putting it out of its misery. Welcome back to Is Anything Real, the reality first leadership show where operators test advice and publish the receipts so you can ship what works. I'm Adam W. Barney, transition leadership coach for executives and founders, author, and host of this podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Laura Sicola, leadership communication expert and the mind behind a metaphor that instantly clicked for me, the Prismatic Voice. And here's why this matters. I coach leaders in transition, the what got you here won't get you there season, and a lot of them are privately wrestling with identity and confidence. They're not weak, they're not lost. They're just in a new room with a new scoreboard. Laura, welcome. Let's start with the myth.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
It should be fun. All right, Laura, what is the authenticity myth in plain language?
Very simply, the way that you said it right up front was terrific. The notion that I have to be me, which means this is my box, and anything outside of that box is not me, and thus inauthentic or fake. And that is such a limiting perspective. It limits us and our ability to grow and expand. Just by extension, if I want to learn to speak Chinese, which I don't happen to speak at the moment, and I decide to learn it, it's not inauthentic. I'm terrible at it because I'm a complete level 1 beginner, but that's not inauthentic. So
Right.
similarly, if I'm used to being an entrepreneur and I'm used to sitting home and in my comfy clothes and just talking to other small business owners, that's my norm. But now suddenly I've decided to take a corporate job and I'm in a mid-manager or higher level executive space. And it's going to be a little different the way we interact, the pace that things move, how much buy-in I need to get. Do I need permission? How sensitive and diplomatic do I need to be on certain things?
Right.
I got to learn a new approach here. And it may not be my preference. It may not be comfortable. It may be like, why do we have all of these ridiculous steps to follow? How tedious. Oh my God. Can't we get anything done around here? No, but it's not inauthentic.
Right.
So you need to learn to adjust and speak that language, which may feel like Chinese when you're in that progress, but it's not inauthentic. So as long as you realize that there's a growth curve that's part of any expansion of skills and revenue for most of us, then okay, accept that growth as a challenge that will ultimately lead us to greater success, but not faking it. That's something different.
Right. And I mean, the other piece of it, Laura, identity, I see it's a spectrum,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
I think the myth kind of might actually be if I don't sound the same everywhere, I'm not real. But the reality is you already don't sound the same everywhere.
Correct.
Because you're a functioning human, you're a functioning adult.
Yes.
What's the cost of believing the myth? What do you think it does to leaders when they step into a bigger role? And how does that hurt them or impede them?
Well, it's a self-limiting belief, simply put. And, Adam, as you mentioned, we already adapt unconsciously most of the time to our environment. I mean, we're here in the podcast space, so we're most likely speaking to other professionals. We're talking about our respective content areas of expertise. So, I'm the metaphor that you referenced earlier in your introduction, the notion of the prismatic voice. This is our evidence that we already do that kind of shifting. So I'm going to call this my purple. If you think about and again, I'm a Jersey Italian, so understand we don't do woo woo. So just bear with me, play with me for a second, humor me on the metaphor here of the prismatic voice. But have you ever seen one of those little crystals that little sun catchers maybe hanging from the kitchen window or from your rearview mirror?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right, and the sun hits it and the little rainbow kind of shoots out the other side and lands on the door or the wall. So that same way, we as individuals, our identity is that white light, but in it are all of those colors of the spectrum. So we'll call this, I'm in my coaching mode, communication space, etc. That's my purple in my spectrum. But I also have a 9-year-old at home.
Right.
And surprise, surprise, I don't talk to him exactly like this.
Right.
Depending on, is it happy mommy, or I need you to do this. Please do not make me say this to you again
Yep.
mode of mommy.
Right.
But we'll call my mommy voice my yellow. And you probably also have, are you a sports fan, Adam?
Um, I mean, I have to say, I was an extra in the 2004 Farrelly Brothers movie Fever Pitch. That's something that
Oh,
people
wow.
might not understand.
Okay.
But as I have two kids, two girls who are 6 and 9, sports has maybe fallen off the
Okay.
list a little bit. But still, I'm at least acutely aware of a little bit out there in the world.
Okay. But baseball was your love at one point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when your team, when you were out at the bar, of course, you have two little kids, you're not at a bar with friends anymore for the most part. But back in the day when you had a couple of friends out watching a baseball game and they made a really stupid play, or the umpire made a bad call against your team, did you use some vocabulary that perhaps you would not use when coaching clients?
I think that is definitely the case. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
it's not just me, right? Those
Right.
slips of sorts, those that shifts happen,
Yep.
and so we'll call that your green, or
Right.
call that your red, and
Right.
that we shift into that style. I also have a grandmother who's 99 years old. God love her. Next month she's turning 100.
Wow.
I don't talk to her in that way, or the way I talk to my 9-year-old, or the way I talk to my clients is a little different shift, but it's all authentically me. We'll call that my blue. It's just understanding that in different contexts, the same way I would dress differently,
Right.
I'm going to speak in a slightly different way, but it's all me. And that's what people need to realize. So if you can start to expand that spectrum of colors to different hues, different shades, different tints, and
Yep.
get those nuances down, it allows you to be more effective with an ever expanding sphere of influence. That's the
Right.
goal.
Right. Right. And in my world, I see this time and time again. And it shows up as same person, new context, and suddenly they're like, wait, do I have to become someone else to be taken seriously? But at the same time, I think where we're going here, Laura, is your identity is the full light, right? Your
Yes.
communication styles are the colors, and leadership in terms of what we were talking about today is choosing the right color on purpose.
Yes. Or
You
the
know,
contextually best color to achieve the purpose that you want. That's really the thing. So when you go into whatever scenario, that's the little prism that the
right,
light hits, and you got to figure out which of all your different colors needs to shine most brightly and which one you need to tone down to be able to get them to hear what you need them to hear. Maybe naturally you're a joker, you like to have fun, you're very casual, but you're with the board of directors and you're looking at some serious budget crises. This might
yeah,
not be the place to be Mr. Funny Man. And
right,
you may want to be, that may be your default, but it's not the most appropriate or the most effective here. So maybe we're going to turn down that orange just a little bit. It's not inauthentic, just
right.
resist some urge here, and go a little bit more red in the moment, or whatever color you like.
Right, right. Well, I mean, also I think that your choice vocabulary voice exists, right?
Yes.
Everyone has it, even the choir. But in this sort of journey, what do you see as the difference between adapting versus performing? And how do you know you're not faking it? You're just fitting the moment.
That's important to recognize. So in what we're describing in the shifting of styles is, I'm a linguist by background, and in
Mhm.
linguistics there's a term, a very neutral term, called code switching, which just means the ability to change your communication style. So I can go from English to Spanish and back, I
Yep,
can go from mommy to coach and
yep,
back. And in the world of code switching, there's also a spectrum of healthy to unhealthy. To the extent that it's a skill that allows you to empower yourself and you can turn it on and off when you
mhm,
want, that's healthy. For some people, they have unfortunately had the experience of needing to do what is referred to as covering. And that is an
mhm.
unhealthy space where you feel like you have to hide who you truly are. Not that you got to tone down the Mr. Funny Man, or you can't just blurt out what
Right,
you want to say in the moment. That's not inauthentic. That's diplomatic and smart and tactful and saying, I don't need to throw the grenade now beyond
Yep.
the momentary catharsis I might get. I'm in here for the long haul. So let's be
Yeah.
strategic and not burn all the bridges in 5 seconds flat. But
Right.
when you feel like, no, I'm not allowed to share who I am. I cannot offer these kinds of thoughts. I'm not allowed to defend myself. I'm not allowed to
Yep.
speak in my accent. Now, there's a difference between in cultural and multilingual spaces.
Sure.
Some people, there are some accents that everybody will have more challenge listening to and understanding people whose accents are different from theirs, which just means
Yep.
you have to work to ensure that you're enunciating, that people are following you. Okay. And both, this is onus on the speaker and the listener, but that's different from feeling like you have to hide because you will be judged
Yep.
for speaking in a particular way. So, all of that is very relative and relevant, but just learning to speak. If I go to another country, I'm going to do my best to, if we're speaking in English, to
Yep.
adjust my accent so that they can understand me. It doesn't matter that I'm a native speaker if
Right.
I'm the one who's hard for them to understand.
Right.
It's on the onus is on me to
Right.
be more intelligible. So it's not covering, it's meeting them halfway.
Right. Right. And I mean, I used to walk into rooms in my corporate career with C-level executives, big age gaps, big stakes. And I
Yep.
wasn't lying about who I was, but I see it as I was adjusting my story and tone so that the truth of whatever I was trying to share could land. But,
Mhm.
like outfits, it's your wardrobe, right?
Yes,
You're not
exactly.
inauthentic because you wore gym clothes to the gym.
Right.
But let's make it tactical. A listener just got promoted yesterday. They were just peers. Today they're the boss. Their
Yep.
insides feel weird and stretched. What do they do? How do they choose the right color without feeling like a fraud or coming off as a fraud? Because
Yes.
that can both happen in both flavors.
And that's important. You brought up a couple of good things. Number one is that the way you change and adapt your communication style, you have to make that decision the same way you would decide what to wear. You in your wardrobe, you already have the gym clothes and the jeans and t-shirts and the business casual and the tuxedo.
Right.
And it's your kind of tuxedo, it's your style of business casual, it's your style and brand and fit of gym clothes. So it's still, they're all you, but based on the context and the people and your objectives, whether to go with the
Right.
tux or the khakis or the sweats.
Right.
And so you make that decision based on the audience. And similarly, you're going to adjust your communication style accordingly. It's all in your vocal wardrobe, but you're going to choose as needed for the
I
group.
like that. I like that. Yeah, yeah. What's a simple test for is this aligned with my values and purpose versus am I shape shifting for approval there?
I think you have to ask yourself the question of, am I making this decision based on fear or based on goals?
Mhm.
Right? Is it something you're trying to accomplish first and foremost and leading with that? Here's what I believe I need to get through because I want them to hear this versus I'm afraid that
Yeah.
if I do this, I will be rejected.
Right.
There's a difference between they will reject my proposal versus they will reject me. And that's a really important distinction to make. If you feel like you are going to be judged negatively because of who you are versus
Mhm.
you're communicating less effectively in general, that's different. And it's really important not to conflate the two because we don't often the culture piece can, of course, there's racism, sexism, all that kind of stuff out there. But if we
Right.
put that aside, that can often be scapegoated. And it's like, oh, well, they didn't like what I said because I'm a woman, I'm this, I'm that.
Yep.
No, it's that maybe I'm the cognitive linguist and I had this challenge when I first went into consulting and left academia. I was still talking like a professor. Way
Mm.
too much technical jargon, way too much data, way too much detail. And in the corporate world, they're like, could you just kind of get to the point? We really don't need all the background. We got it. You're smart,
Yep.
but
Yep.
get to the point. And I had to learn to shift. I had to learn. It wasn't that they didn't like me because of my age or my gender or my this or my that.
Yeah.
I wasn't communicating in a way. It was my trained, learned default, my new normal as professor, but it wasn't effective for the
Right.
audience. So I had to learn to shift. Wasn't being inauthentic. It was learning to speak their language. And when I embraced that as a new tool, as a new skill set, as a new language that I now own, it opened my world of power and influence. And that's what I had to
Mhm.
learn.
Mhm. And I mean, the goal there wasn't about, we're not talking about being liked. The goal is to really be clear, right? And
Yes,
your job also is not to be, let's say, the same in every room. It's to be effective without losing your soul.
correct. Correct.
But what would you say? What's the most common leadership voice mistake you hear? The thing people do because they think it sounds leadery, but it ends up just sounding weird.
They fall into the expert's curse. And the expert's curse is, especially when nerves are kicking in a little bit, the feeling of, I want to prove how smart I am. I want to convince you by showing you all the data, all the research, all the work that I've done, and give you all the information that I possibly can so that I can preempt any questions, because questions are scary, and make sure that you just, if nothing else, I'm going to muscle my way to your yes by
Mm,
drowning you in information and hoping that that's good enough. And what usually happens is that the listener glazes over
yep,
less than 60 seconds into it,
yep.
and you become Charlie Brown's teacher. You know what I mean by that?
Wop, a wop, 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 wop. Yep.
Exactly, yes. And w so the most counterintuitive piece of advice I can give, Adam, is that if you want people to think you're smart, the best and fastest way to do that is to make them feel smart by making your point as clear, as simple, as concise as possible so that
Right,
they don't have to mentally do the math and, okay, carry the one. I think I understand what you're saying. When
right,
they hear it, they just instantly get it. And when
right.
they get it, they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And they think you're smart because they feel smart. And that's how you get to yes faster.
Right. I love it. I love it. So I mean, let's get to some of the receipts here. When leaders apply this, what changes? What's the before and after that you've seen tangibly pay off? What is it? Trust? Is it clarity? Speed of decisions? Confidence in conflict? Or just better overall team performance?
All of the above. All of the above. Because when you're stuck in the expert's curse, which is that you don't know, you lose track of what your audience does or doesn't know, does or doesn't need to know, does or doesn't understand as you're sharing it, etc.
Hmm.
When you can make it so simple that they just get it, you stop talking at people and start talking with people. And
Yep.
that's a two-way piece, which means you're listening as much as you're speaking, if not more for that matter. And that's when you become relatable. That's when you become trustworthy. That's when you help people feel like, oh, he gets it. She gets it. You get me, not just that you're trying to force your way onto into my brain or onto my agenda. So that's where the trust and credibility and the image of leadership, the reputation of leadership truly begin.
Hmm. I mean, what would you say? This one pushes a little different corner here, Laura. But how do women rather get punished for the same, let's call them color choices, as you mentioned earlier, that
Mm.
men get rewarded for? And what's the workaround to make that turn into successful executive presence and executive performance in that kind of a situation?
Yeah, there are definitely double standards. When and we are grossly generalizing here, but more often than not, a man can get away with being more abrasive, more a little pushier, etc., um, more aggressive, and it'll kind of get chalked up.
Mm,
Women get the reputation faster for being pushy, for being witchy, for being whatever other adjective that you want, and it
right.
becomes a label much more quickly. So both groups need to learn these skills. For women, there's a little bit more of the need to finesse. Again, both need to
Mm,
finesse it, but it'll shift women's reputations faster. And the way that you learn to finesse is building off the prismatic voice metaphor that we
Yep.
talked about before,
Right.
inside everybody's brain, Adam, you have a mixing board, a DJ's equalizer, a mixing board with all
Yep.
those levers and dials on it. It's not just a giant power switch. This is me. That's not me. What we need to learn to do is to recognize how many of those levers are on our mixing board. And
Mm.
so it's not necessarily where strength that you want to convey may be coming across as aggressive or intimidating. It's not
Sure.
about, well, I just got to shut it off and go from strong to nicey nicey. That's binary, right? That's the this
Yep.
is me, that's not me. I hear so
Right.
many women say, well, I've got this reputation of being too aggressive, of being too intimidating. I tried being nice and that didn't work. So what am I supposed to do? Mm-mm.
Right.
We got to figure out what it is about how you're demonstrating your strength, that it's somehow crossing too far into the gray and coming across as aggressive rather than just authoritative and confidence inspiring. And you probably
Right.
have to adjust something from a 7.4 to a 6.9.
Ooh, small
Move it
adjustment.
just it's
Small adjustment.
always the tiny shifts that make the biggest difference, but we're used to looking at on and off switches, and that's where we get ourselves in
Mm.
trouble. So when you can start to identify all the stuff on your mixing board and how to nudge what just in, like, decimal points,
Yep.
you'll
Yep.
be amazed at what doors suddenly open for
Right.
you.
I mean, I love that proof there because, I think you and I both know in our work that or inspiration doesn't hold under Tuesday, proof holds under Tuesday,
Mm,
right? But I mean, also if authenticity means never adapt, that's not authenticity, that's rigidity, right? So
yes,
the small
correct.
adjustments are incredibly powerful.
Yep.
All
Yes.
right, Laura. One move. Let's say leader listening has 15 minutes. Something that everyone listening can do today, right? Let's call it maybe the Prism audit.
Sure.
Three contexts you live in. Then what's the purpose? What does this room need for me? What color do I choose on purpose? Where might you take that?
I would encourage people to look at your calendar and see what's coming up. One meeting, one call, it doesn't have to be something huge, but ask yourself, what impression do you want to make? How do you want to come across? Give yourself just one or two adjectives, personal qualities that you want them to perceive in you. And besides smart, we're going to give you that one. We know you want to be an expert, blah, 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 blah. Not my first
Yep.
rodeo.
Right.
So, confident, authoritative, approachable, relatable, empathetic, fun. You pick whatever couple are most important for you for that particular audience. How do you want to connect with them? How do you want to come across to them? Then
Right.
just take your phone, prop it, prop it up, turn on your video camera, and record a little role play with yourself, just the first 60 seconds. How would you open that conversation? How do you welcome people? How do you kick off
Mhm.
the agenda? How do you do whatever else? And then go back and watch those 60 seconds and just ask yourself, if you didn't know that person from Adam or Eve,
Yep.
would you, on a gut reflex level, would you say, yes, that person seems confident or authentic or comfortable in their own skin
Yep.
or fun or approachable or whatever those qualities were? And just say yes or no, why or why not? And no, well, sort of, 'cause there's no gray here. I want you to
Mhm.
say more yes or more no, and then dissect it and figure out why. What are you doing that somehow is just leaving that feeling in your gut that's saying, I don't know. It's something's off. That's your starting point because that's where you're seeing what everybody else sees that
Right.
you never saw before, and that's getting in your way. That's your blind spot, and when you can shed light on that, anything becomes possible.
Beautiful. And I really feel, Laura, if you can't choose your voice on purpose, your stress will choose it for you, right? So
Absolutely.
keep that
Yes.
in mind. Laura, where can folks find you, learn from you, and go deeper?
Thank you so much, Adam. By all means, visit me at my website, which is very simply laurasicola.com. I would invite everybody to, there's right at the bottom of the page, you can see where to sign up for my newsletter, which comes out weekly, stories, uh, resources, Tips, always lots of tips for communication, ways to get clear on what's in that blind spot and how to have greater influence right then and there. So, would invite you to do that. And of course, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or other social media platforms as well.
Beautiful. And Laura, we'll of course link to that for our listeners in the show notes below. But the last question I always land on here, Laura, is anything real in terms of perspective and leadership from where you come from?
What is real is that your ability to master that mixing board inside and to see all of those settings as part of your authentic self, and then be the willingness to embrace the challenge, to embrace the struggle, to embrace the discomfort as you learn to master more settings will truly open so many more doors and
Mm,
provide so much more influence as you learn to accept all of those new settings, as it were, as part of your authentic voice. That's where the power lies. That's where
That
influence begins.
that is what's real. And Laura, here's what feels real to me. Leadership isn't just one voice; it's a spectrum.
Yes.
And if you're in transition right now with the spectrum you're on, you're not broken. You're expanding.
Yes. And so learning to do that, especially in the interview context when you're in transitions, do you tell stories? You may not be a natural storyteller. You need to learn to tell some stories, not just say, well, I did X.
Yep.
Give me the background behind it. Does it seem like you are telling the story under duress? Like,
Yep.
okay, you've got a gun to my head, so I'm sharing this information, but I'd really rather be anywhere else versus do I feel like you actually want to be here talking to me? You may need
Right.
to dig a little deep because maybe right now you're feeling really nervous, but if all you're projecting is discomfort,
Sure.
that's awkward feeling, and that's not going to help you. The fact that you are nervous, if you're telegraphing that as I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous,
Yep.
that's not gonna help. But to hide it or to try not to just telegraph it outright, that's not inauthentic.
Yep.
That's helping to establish rapport.
Right.
So don't get in your head with those big label definitions. There's a time and a place to need to know. You don't want them to see your nerves. You want them to see your qualifications. You
Yep.
want them to see your fit. So lead with what you want. Be aware of what that is. Happy to talk to anybody out there about transitions and interview skills and all those kinds of things as well.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Well, if this episode hit you, send it to one leader who's trying to be authentic by staying small. And if you're leading through a transition and want a reality first reset, there's a 20-minute foundational call linked in the show notes as well. With me, no pitch, just space to get honest about what's working, what's waste, and the one move to run next. But until next time, proof over performance and ship what works. But thank you, Laura. If this episode of Is Anything Real resonated, you're probably at a moment where the old playbook isn't holding anymore. I work with transitioning founders and executives to install operating rhythms that hold under pressure. Not motivation, not hype. I've spent over 20 years inside high-pressure environments and worked with over 300 leaders through moments where clarity mattered more than speed. If you want clarity you can actually rely on, book a foundation call at adamwbarney.com. Clarity over chaos, always.